So when I'm receiving, we can give some real clear individual info to players around thinking about what side the player is starting to approach with their pressure, so that we can use that to our advantage and turn into the space the other side to be able to start to play out. Hi, I'm Emily Senior, Regional Coach Developer for the North East. This is a 6-week session program on passing and receiving for 12 to 16-year-olds. This is week 2 of your 6-week session program. So this is our arrival activity for week 2. So this week we're going to be focusing on how we scan to be able to receive the ball, and thinking about the decision making around when we do receive the ball. Are we receiving to turn and play forward ourselves as an individual, or are we receiving the ball to pass forward immediately? So we're going to be in tight spaces for this arrival activity. So you can see we've got a 4-piece grid set up. We've got 3 different teams. So we've put 3 players in each. You can vary this depending on how many players you've got in your session. For example, if you had an odd number, you might just have less in one of the squares, and that would be absolutely fine. But you do need 4 different teams if we can. Now, the way that the game works is if blacks are starting with the ball, we might say that yellow are our pressing team. So there's only ever going to be 1 pressing team, and the other 3 teams become our in-possession teams. So these 3 teams are working together to try and keep the ball. 1 presser from the pressing team can go out to try and win the ball from the team that have it. Now, because we're working in tight spaces this week, we're going to put a bit of a condition on the game that there has to be 3 passes within your square before you can play it out into one of the other squares. So you can see we're locked into our own square in this game. We can't rotate into any of the other squares. So we've completed 3 passes as a black team past this pressing player. So now we can release it into one of the other 2 squares. When it's been released, another presser is going to come out, and then we're doing exactly the same as the blue team as the blacks have just done. 3 passes, 1, 2, 3, and then we can release out into one of the 2 that are remaining. Now, we want this game to be really fast paced, so players will be looking to probably play off smaller amounts of touches in this game, and that's really going to get them thinking about the weight of their pass, but also, and probably more importantly so for this week, their receiving skills. So what does their body shape look like, and have they already scanned to check where the space is around them? So they're not only thinking about the oncoming pressure, but also which space the ball can't be played into. So they know when we're playing the ball in this space here, between us, we can only play it out into the blues or the blacks. So we have to be very aware when we're receiving the ball that our body shape opens us up to be able to play into the blacks or the blues, not back into where the yellows have come from. If the yellows win the ball, then they can take it back to theirs, and the team that they won it from will then become the pressing team. Okay, so we're into week 2, practice 1 now. So at this point, we're really going to hone in on our players' scanning ability. So the things that they need to be looking for. So what information they're taking in whilst they're playing this game. There's going to be a real focus on their receiving skills, and in particular, their receive to turn as an individual on the ball. So what we've got in front of us is 5 players around the outside, and we've got 4 in possession players in yellow and 3 out of possession players in red. So we've stuck with the same number of players that we've had in our previous practice. Again, if you have more players than this can be adapted very easily. Just make sure that you've got a slight overload in terms of in possession to out of possession inside, because it could get too challenging to start with if they are completely matched up. So around the outside, we've put 4 footballs in play. So the players on the outside are only looking to play to the in-possession players, which in this case are yellow. So we're going to look to play the ball into our in-possession player. Their job is to then avoid the oncoming pressure from an out-of-possession player and look to turn the ball upon receiving to be able to get out and play to another player around the outside that is free of the ball. Now, what is to note here is that all in possession players are going to be doing this simultaneously. So there's a little bit of extra interference as the other players in the middle are moving around the area. But as they also look to receive, that means there's going to be more space to be able to play this to another outside player on the edge. The game is free flowing, so it will continue going. Once I've played that one out, I can then go and look to receive another ball, and I might get pressure from another player as well. So body shape becomes important to be able to receive and know where I'm passing. Now, in this game, there's a really good reference point that you can use with your players to get them understanding the principles of scanning. So they need to know what they're looking for when they're scanning, not just the term scan, because that doesn't mean much to our players. So when I'm looking to scan, what am I actually looking for as an individual? There are 4 key things you want them to look for, and the best way to say it is scan for bots. And by bots we mean the ball, the opposition players that are around us, so the defenders around us, our teammates, because ultimately that's who we're going to be looking for next once we've turned with the ball, and then the space, because we need to know what space we can turn into when we receive it. So you can imagine now, if this yellow player is looking to receive it from the blue on the edge, they're going to be scanning to check where the space is around them, where the oncoming pressure, so the opposition player is, but also scanning to check back to make sure they're aligned with the ball, so that when they receive, they can turn and set their body up straight to go into the space, but also know where their next pass is going to be. So there are 2 ways that we can further challenge our players in this game. So if we have our in possession team looking to receive the ball from the players around the outside, we might actually take 2 of the footballs away from the edge of the space and ask that our players in the middle now look to combine with one another. So now we're not just looking at turning and looking to keep the ball as an individual. We might actually see that the better option for the player is to turn slightly and pass out to the player that's near us. So we start to combine. So we can put a limit on that. We could say to players that you have to be able to combine with at least one other player before the ball goes out to the side. So we receive it here, I can play it out to the player that I've seen in space, and then they can look to play it on to the outside. That might be one way that we add a little extra challenge. Really good if we're looking at their decision-making capabilities at that point. Another way that we might challenge, particularly if you want to put the emphasis on what they do as an individual when they receive the ball, is to actually make this completely matched up in the middle. So we might take a player from the outside, give them a red bib, and add them into the middle. So now we've got completely matched up, so you can imagine now every player is going player to player. So when I receive the ball here as a yellow, I am guaranteed to have a player on my back. So when I'm receiving, we can give some real clear individual info to players around thinking about what side the player is starting to approach with their pressure, so that we can use that to our advantage and turn into the space the other side to be able to start to play out here. Now, it's good to note at this point as well that you want to make sure that all 3 teams have a go at this. We don't want to leave these players on the outside for very long. So we need to make sure that we're rotating this, probably maximum 3 minutes, to make sure that each team has a go at this. Okay, so we're going into our final practice of week 2 now, and we want to put some of those scanning and receiving skills into play, but in what will feel like a real game situation for the players, which is going to really excite them. What you've got here is the 3 teams that we've used from the previous game, as well as the area that we've used from the previous game. So you can see there's going to be a really quick transition from the last practice straight into this practice, so that we're giving players more ball time, more time where they're just playing instead of having too much time on the transitions. So I've got one of our 3 teams on the outside here. So our team in red are working on the outside, and I've got them working between the line of the halfway line and the edge of the pitch, and the same for the other 2 as well. So they'll be working up and down these lines here. We've then got our yellow team that will be starting with the ball in this case, and our blue team as well. Now, good to note that they can go anywhere in this area. The halfway line is just there for reference to make it realistic to the game. and will be a good point if you don't have goalkeepers in this, that you're asking players that they must be over the halfway line before they finish in this practice. If you do have goalkeepers, it might be that you want to open this up so that they can finish from anywhere, because that will get them thinking about the kind of spaces that they're in to be able to receive, to be able to try and score as well. So in this game, we've got yellows shooting in this direction, blues are shooting to the opposite direction, and the aim of the game is to connect with teammates, look to get into good spaces, to receive and score in the opposition's goal. But if you're in possession, you actually have help from the team around the outside. So you've got a natural overload, which should mean that we have a lot more success on the ball. So there's a little less pressure. If we do feel ourselves under pressure, we can start to play out to the players on the outside, which gives our team time to get into space, to give ourselves more time to receive and think about turning to be able to go and score. So we'll be thinking about those scanning moves that we've spoken about in the previous practice. Are we assessing the space to look for where the ball is? In relation to that, have we scanned to see where the opposition are? Have we scanned to check if our opposition are close enough around us to be able to play to? And have we scanned to see what space we can get into to be able to receive, exploit, and go and score? If we do score in this game, the team that scores will go back to their half to reset, but the team that has conceded quickly come off the pitch, and the other team around the outside will quickly come onto the pitch to get the game going again, so that everybody is having some intense, high intensity movements to be able to be constantly in the game, not waiting too long around the outside. So our match day outcomes for week 2. We've done a lot of work with our players around their scanning capabilities. So we want to make sure that our players are scanning, and to be able to do that, we need to make sure that they are taking in information. So when they're checking over their shoulder, are they checking to see where opposition players are so that they know where not to go with the ball? Are they checking to see where their teammates are in case they are able to pass the ball? And are they checking if there's space? Because there's a big focus in this week around their decision making. So if there is space, they need to be thinking about going and exploiting that themselves. So turning with the ball when they receive and going into the space. Or actually, if there isn't that space there and they can see opposition players, it might be that we have to go and find a teammate. So we might have to scan out the other side, receive the ball, find the teammate and be able to play on instead. So a big focus on the decision making skills this week.